everyone! Now, if you watched my last May review video, you'll know that I read 10 books, and so like I normally do, I'm splitting it up into 2 parts so I can focus a little bit more on individual reviews. So here are the 5 books that I read in the end of May. Now, May was a bit of a weird month for me. I don't know if anybody else works retail, but you know, or if you have worked retail, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But you get customers who talk down to you and treat you like you're really stupid. And that happened a lot in the last week and a half of May and made me really, really frustrated. So I read some authors that like I knew would cheer me up. So yeah. So the first author is Thomas Hardy's The Distracted Preacher. Now, I actually read this without Yamini and Ange. I'd had a really bad day at work and I was just like, I just need to read something that is going to cheer me up. So I picked this up. This is normally included in bind-up editions. I have it in the Melville Publishing House edition, which I found at BMV for like $5, so I picked it up. This is kind of a funny little novella. It deals with smuggling, and it's actually, I think it's one of my, on like reflection, I think it's actually one of my favorite Hardys for the female character. Like she's so independent and strong, and she reminds me a lot of Bathsheba. So this deals with Mr. Stockville, who is a young preacher, and he is placed in this town and he ends up renting a room from a young widow, and it's just kind of interesting. Like it deals with kind of the dissenters movement, and it also deals with smuggling and like issues of fighting the crown. But the female character, Lizzie Newberry, is just really interesting. Like I try not to give anything away, but it's just, it's so great. It's got such a strong female character. The ending, it knocked it down from a 5-star to a 4-star, just because it's kind of that, you know, typical strong female character ends up marrying somebody in the end, which doesn't really give anything away. That's pretty typical for Hardy. It ends in marriage. But yeah, it's just, it was so great. It was kind of this like pirate adventure, and that was really fun, and I needed that. So then I had actually finished David Copperfield quite quickly. Like I was surprised at how quickly I got through it. So I decided to listen to Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens on audiobook. Now this was much shorter, and it was really cheap on Audible. I think it was like $1 or so. I forget who the narrator was. I can't recommend him. He wasn't particularly good, but I mean, it was like $1, so I went through it. Now, I have a lot of issues with this book. It's super anti-Semitic. Let's just get that out of the way. And it really bothered me. I mean, the portrayal of Fagin, who is referred to so many times as the Jew, and like just, now it's really interesting to note that because Dickens published serially, and you know, it kind of came out in installments, that people did react against this and didn't like his portrayal, and he ended up changing it in the later portion where he cut down on the amount of times that he referred to Fagin as a Jew, but it's still problematic. I mean, I think it's indicative of the period, certainly, but as a modern reader, and especially in, you know, the aftermath of World War II and the Holocaust, it's definitely not, yeah. There are no words to describe how poorly Dickens, who's normally like a champion for the undertrod and the underdog, like he just, it's brutal. Now, Oliver Twist is, I think, one of my least favorite Dickens, and it's not just because it's anti-Semitic, it's also because it's just boring. Like, it's, you know, you kind of know the story because I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming most people know the rough story of Oliver Twist, the young orphan who gets taken up by thieves, and, you know, I know in my elementary school we did a musical for it, and nobody sang in this book, so I was a little disappointed by that. But it's just kind of, Oliver Twist as a character and as a main character is dull and boring. You know what? It lacks the complexity that Bleak House or David Copperfield or Little Dorrit has. And it's just, you know, it's okay, but I would say it's I would rank this lower than Hard Times and lower than A Tale of Two Cities, which were previously two of my lowest Dickens. So yeah, definitely, I mean, it's a quick read, but not my favorite overall for Dickens. Bit disappointed in that. So I was still having a really crummy month, and I had a really, really bad day at work. And I decided I was going to treat myself, and I was going to read the last Shirley Jackson novel that I had left to read. Now, I've been holding off on this for like a year, and it is Sundial, because I knew once I read this, I have read every single Shirley Jackson novel. Now, I still have short stories, and I still have some of her nonfiction writing to go, so I'm not completely done with Jackson, but this is the last novel. And you guys know how much I love Shirley Jackson. Like, We Have Always Lived in the Castle is in my top 10, probably top 5 books of all time. The Road Through the Wall is absolutely fantastic. The Bird's Nest, just the way that she deals with things and writes is just, I love it. I love it. So I decided to read The Sundial because, you know, when you're feeling crummy, you want a book that just kind of gets you. And Jackson tears people to shreds and gets to the root of their humanity and is brutal. And it just, I'm gonna read you a little bit of this. This is just the first page. And it just, as soon as I read the first page, I'm like, yes, this is the novel that I need at this point in my life. After the funeral, they came back to the house, now indisputably Mrs. Halloran's. They stood uneasily, without any certainty, in a large, lovely entrance hall, and watched Mrs. Halloran go up into the right wing of the house to let Mr. Halloran know that Lionel's last rites had gone off without melodrama. Young Mrs. O'Halloran, looking after her mother-in-law, said without hope, "Maybe she will drop dead on the doorstep, Fancy dear. Would you like to see Granny drop dead on the doorstep?" "Yes, mother." Fancy pulled the long skirt of the black dress her grandmother had put on her. Yeah. At the funeral of this woman's son, her daughter-in-law is like, maybe she'll drop dead and it would be the best thing in the world. It's the first paragraph of this novel. Clearly dark and twisted. Now, The Sundial is it's much more supernatural, I would say. It's much more along the lines of The Haunting of Hill House than, say, We Have Always Lived in the Castle or The Road Through the Wall, which deals strictly with kind of, you know, people being awful. Now, people are certainly awful in this. This is just, it's such a weird book. Basically, as mentioned in the outset, this woman's son has died, and she lives in this giant house, which is hers by inheritance because her son has died, and living in it are her daughter-in-law and her granddaughter, her sister-in-law, and her granddaughter's tutor, and just this man who hangs around. Those are the main characters, and her husband, who is wheelchair bound and really doesn't make a lot of appearances. And at the very beginning, her sister-in-law goes out and they've got these massive grounds and they've got a maze, and she has a vision from her father who built this house, and it's basically that the world is going to end and anybody who lives in the house will be safe. It's all on the back page, it's not spoilers. So it kind of deals with their preparations for the end of the world, because they all, for various reasons, believe this to be true. They certainly, like, there are signs that come up, and it's really interesting. It looks at how people view other people when they think that, like, the world's gonna end, and you really see some interesting aspects of humanity as Jackson portrays it. Really enjoyed this. Still not, like, it doesn't knock We Have Always Lived in the Castle out of its, like, top place. It doesn't beat The Bird's Nest. It doesn't beat The Road Through the Wall, but it is a really good Jackson. I would definitely put it above The Haunting of Hill House, which was, to me, you know, interesting, but ultimately kind of a little bit lacking on Jackson's part. I definitely really enjoyed this. I'm really sad that I have read all of Jackson's novels, but yeah, just really enjoyable overall. Would recommend this if you like Jackson. So then the last 2 books I read are just, I kind of just picked them up because I was like, I had time at the end of the month and I wasn't reading anything and I didn't want to start anything I had planned for next month. It's kind of, when you're a booktuber, you have this weird thing where you're like, I don't want to start the stuff on my TBR because I've planned it for next month, but I don't want to have anything carry over. It's this weird thing. I've talked about this with other booktubers, and we're all kind of like, yeah, it's weird how you get into this kind of mentality where you don't want to have books left over. So I picked up Ivan Turgenev, who's a Russian author's Fathers and Sons. Now I got this because the Pocket Classics, I did a whole video on this. This was one of the shorter ones, and I'd read Turgenev's First Love. It's a novella, which I really enjoyed, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up. It was quite short. It was like 230 some odd pages. And I really, really like this. I like Turgenev as an author. I definitely want to pick up more of his works. So this basically deals with two main families. So our main character has gone off to St. Petersburg and has gone to university and has come home a nihilist. And his father is just absolutely like in love with his son, thinks his son is the best thing ever, but he lives this quiet provincial life, and he has brought his mistress into his house, and he's kind of embarrassed about this. And it just kind of deals with generational like lack of understanding. The son brings home a really strict nihilistic friend, and you know, there's all kinds of tensions there. It's got love, it's just misunderstandings. It has a duel. There is a duel in this. If you like duels, I would definitely recommend this. I'm really enjoying Turgenev as an author. I want to read more of his works. I'm really enjoying Russian literature right now. So yeah, just absolutely enjoyed this. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. So if you're looking to get into Russian literature, I would recommend him over Tolstoy. I think Tolstoy can be a little wordy. This is a little bit more on the, you know, understanding human nature and kind of understanding Russian society, but not going to the extremes that Tolstoy sometimes goes to. So definitely a good introduction to Russian literature there. And then the last one I read was a novella. It was the last day of the month, and I was like, I'm gonna read some Stendhal, who is a French author, and I read this novella, The Abbess of Castro. Yeah, did not enjoy this. Not a good introduction to Stendhal, I don't think. I am going to read his The Red and the Black, which Yamini absolutely loves, but this is kind of one of those found manuscript novels where it prefaces it by saying, I am translating this. I found it in a monastery, and you know, this isn't actually my work. I hate this kind of novel. I hated it when Henry James did it. I hate it when Stendhal does it. Not my favorite. Not my favorite at all. This takes place in Renaissance Italy. It deals kind of with the bandetti, the brigades who kind of run around the country and just get into, like, basically outlaws. So I did not enjoy this, partially because this is my period of history that I study, and kind of it buttresses my thesis topic. Like, I deal with violence in this time period, so I do know quite a bit about this. And it's just, it is such an over-the-top, crappy romance. I'm sorry. I did not enjoy this. It was, I mean, I gave it 2 stars because the writing was okay, but it just, basically, it's about star-crossed lovers. This young outlaw falls in love with this noble woman, and all kinds of craziness ensues, and she ends up going into, because it's the title of the book, this is not a spoiler, she ends up becoming the abbess of an abbey, and like, just, yeah, it was a bit ridiculous. It was over the top. This is why I don't like those found manuscripts, and kind of this like gothic conceit. I really didn't like it in, I think it's Walpole's The Castle of Otranto. Like, it's very similar in feeling to The Castle of Otranto. You can definitely see like almost direct line between those two. There's no supernatural element to this, so at least there's that, but it's just like, and it's not over the top ridiculous in a way that like Matthew Lewis's The Monk is. Like, Matthew Lewis's The Monk is over the top ridiculous, kind of this gothic craziness. You know, you've got priests trying to rape women, and it's just crazy. But this is just, it's just kind of floridly romantic and dull, and you know, it's not exciting at all. So I would not recommend this, but I will give Stendhal another chance because I do have The Red and the Black on my shelf, so I will give it another chance. So yes. So those are the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys have read. And if you guys have this issue of like at the end of the month, you're like, I don't want to carry a book over. There's this weird like distinction with time, I think, and BookTube and like YouTube in general, where you're like, you're so aware of where in the month you are that you're kind of, yeah, before I started booktube, this was never an issue. Now I'm just like, oh, the month, I've got to read a set amount in the month. I think because I do these, you know, monthly reviews and I do my TBRs, it just makes me more aware of this. And I will see you guys in another video. Bye!